leafy vegetables, particularly things like kale, etc., are wonderful for pulling out other metals we might have as toxicity, such as iron. Iron that is not chelated is hostile to the body when taken, and copper can be in excess for many people, as well as the others that we have already mentioned. Lead is a particular problem, and because lead is such a problematic metal, it was the downfall of the Roman Empire. Only the wealthy, meaning the leadership of the land, were able to have lead pipes bring water for their baths, for their drinking, etc., straight into their home. And this caused them to go half crazy, crazed, depravities resulted, etc. And this craziness made it so that they could be overthrown by other cultures that were therefore more virile. And the cans we use in canned food, restaurants use it. Canned food is in an aluminum can, but the seams are put together with lead. Some old houses still have lead couplings between pipes. We are looking at something that is more harmful than what I have even mentioned. As many of you know, we have been studying chemtrails now for some years. And the chemtrails are the fuel of airplanes that are dumped over populated areas with fungus in it. It's like a green jelly, the fungus, and it looks like something you see in the movie Flubber, where they have a green jelly that bounces around. That is what it looks like, but it's less dense. It is in fact fungus that grows in the tanks of airplanes above something like 30,000 feet. They had assumed that it would cause a huge pandemic of lung disease that would look as though it is tuberculosis. And they had thought that it was for sure, because after all, somebody with a common cold could wipe out villages in the Amazon when they went there as a missionary, because they had never encountered the common cold and had no resilience against it. There's no resilience in us against a fungus that builds up in gasoline above 30,000 feet. So they had hoped for sure it would make us ill. But the light workers of the earth refused to be victimized. They became self-empowered in many areas of their life. They took up their strength, and this prevented this from happening. Now, a side effect of this is that it is leaded gasoline that has been dumped on populations, and there has been lead poisoning as a result of it. So we have to get it out, my brothers and sisters. At a spiritual level, why is this here? The spiritual level is the judgments that we've held. The densest of all things in our spiritual evolution is the judgments that begin with this is good and that is bad. You will say to me, now, Almine, how can a mass murderer doing horrible things to people possibly be good? That is because he is displaced out of his reality. In parallel realities, his actions would be reversed, and he would actually be a beneficiary of those people. But when we open gaps between the yin and the yang, which are opposites to one another, parallel realities, things that come through are seen as hostile by us. The vice versa is true as well. As we try and help them, it is seen as a horrible act of violence against them, because we are opposite to them. This issue of opposites makes the war within. There are no opposites if there's no up and no down. There's only a up and a down because we think of something as worthy and unworthy. It is so interesting that in biblical language, it is often the word the upright that is used for those who are righteous or the good people, because it is so that we regard things that are upright to us as good. It is time to let our judgments go. We don't need to judge anything as good or bad. We just need to observe, knowing that there's a place for everything or it wouldn't be there. We have come now to the radiation issue. The recent meltdown that has plagued Japan, Chernobyl, the planet has never recovered of that. Nostradamus has said that wormwood would defile the waters of the earth. Chernobyl is Russian for wormwood, and it has indeed. The children in my daughter's school are doing tests on the seaweed on our beaches. We have very pristine beaches in Oregon. Yet the Japanese current has traveled down the west coast of America, and they are testing radiation now in all seaweed samples collected. Our water table is polluted with radiation. So what do we do about this? We have a phenomenal product, first of all, which is Radinex. Radinex was tested by the German scientists that developed this spagyric homeopathic, but when they went all the way up to Chernobyl and touched the building. Now there is a 40-mile radius fence around Chernobyl. And the Russian scientists were waiting when they returned, and they were standing there with their Geiger counters, and they could detect no radiation in them because they had used Radinex before, during, and after. Radinex is phenomenal, and again, highly, highly recommended that we use on a semi-regular basis. In women, radiation lodges in the mammary glands. In men, in the prostate. We are seeing cancer numbers rising with these particular type of cancers particularly. And interestingly enough, it has also risen in Japan, who eat a lot of sushi, using raw fish, using shellfish at times, using the seaweed. We have to now, unfortunately, start to consider what we eat in the form of fish and shell food. And what is the reason for the radiation? The radiation we have become poisoned by is the belief systems of others. And I will look at that in a second, but let me just recommend that every 3 months to 3.5 months, you use at least 1 bottle of Radinex. Again, strengthening the lymph with Ityrus, strengthening the liver with apohepat will absolutely enhance getting rid of the radiation. So the radiation is there because it is getting harder and harder not to look at the reality that man has made for himself. All around us there is suffering. When I open up to my classes questioning, I hear often as the very first question, when will the suffering of people around me cease? Financially, with health, losses, and emotional losses, as generations can't speak to one another anymore, as children go their own way due to lack of care, or even if you gave them good care, due to peers and their influence when they had lack of good care. So we have a situation where there's tremendously much suffering around the earth. Earlier in 2012, I had a course in which I had explained to people They must not look left or right at the suffering, because they are the salt of the earth, and if the salt loses its flavor, there is no salt anywhere on earth. What I meant by this, we create our realities by what we emphasize. If you look at humanity's reality that they have made for themselves, and you try and fix it, you try and condemn it, you try and look at it so you can feel less guilty about thriving or whatever it is, you're not emphasizing the positive things that you want in your environment. You're not creating a higher reality. If enough of us put emphasis on the poetry of life, on the grand surrender trust that can produce adventure in life, at being wonderfully happy each day at our existence, if we can't within us accentuate our abundance, then enough of us will not be making a new reality to lift humanity into. In this way, you can describe the Lightworkers as the saviors of the earth. They emphasize through living within certain principles that will bring about a new reality. But if they look at the reality of mankind with grief and empathic suffering, they will not be able to do this. The highest service you can render is to flourish, not to equalize with those that you regard as less fortunate. Less fortunate means that they have not emphasized within themselves certain principles to live at a higher reality. You are here as a way shower. Let's take up this challenge. Let's take in our hands the good things of life. Let's find something to be happy about, even in moments of stress. We do not live from fear. We live from the surrendered trust that life is good, no matter how the appearances may seem.